back to the Movable Podcast. I am your host, Nick Kush, and this time on the pod, we're doing a little bit of a 2023 roundup so far. You know, we're halfway through the year. A lot of movies have been seen. Many discussions have been had already, so we figured we'd take a chance at this point in the year to kind of go over some of our favorite movies of the year. And to help me do that is fellow big movie guy, Spencer Henderson. What's going on, buddy?
Big movie guy. Yeah. I'm excited to talk to you today. I think it's been an interesting year so far in film. It's honestly been a really interesting summer too. It's like I feel like a lot of stuff has kind of been underperforming and underwhelming a lot of people. So I think we're in an interesting spot in the year.
Yeah, I think I'm past the point where it's like, is this a good year for movies or not? Because it's like I don't know. Like, there's always good stuff. Maybe it's not. Maybe all the blockbusters underperform, but you're always going to find good movies to watch. But it has been weird. I will definitely give you that, because you have like all these movies, like you have like your Elementals, your Dial of Destinies. They're all kind of underperforming. Then you have Across the Spider-Verse over here doing really, really well. We'll talk about that movie later on. It seems very weird. There seems like there's things in flux, and I'm kind of with you where the summer movie season, we're still kind of, we're recording this before your Oppenheimers, your Barbies, your Mission Impossibles, so there's still a lot there. It seems like we are headed for a really good second half of the year too, and we're recording this on the day that the Napoleon trailer dropped. That movie looks sick.
It was in my most anticipated too. I just want to.
Good for you. You're doing it.
That. Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like, we're kind of these lists that we kind of put together are kind of more of our favorites, not necessarily in any particular order. But I have a feeling that a lot will change by the end of the year. Then you have all your awards movies that we don't even know about yet that will probably get dated at some point. They'll play at your Venices and whatnot, AFIs and all the fall festivals. So there's lots to come. But there has been a lot good so far that we wanted to highlight here. And I feel like between both of our lists, I think we have a wide variety of different movies. I think they're pretty cool. Different genres, different budget levels. So I think we have two good lists here. But how we'll do it is we both just kind of have 5 movies that we want to share. No particular order. We have one shared movie that we were going to save for the end. So I guess that's 9 movies here total, and we'll kind of get in some honorable mentions. But yeah, movies, they're pretty good. So why don't we just jump on in here? Spencer, I'll start with a movie on your side. What is a movie you wanted to throw out here as one of your favorites so far?
So mine actually I will do in order, and
okay. You're breaking the structure already. Good job.
Okay, well, we don't actually have to do
that's okay.
The order
I'm
thing, but it's
like
you. Okay.
Get to your movies. I believe in you.
Yeah. So my number 5 is Showing Up, which is the new Kelly Reichardt movie. My number 5 spot, there were a lot of things kind of battling for that spot. And I just feel like this is one that it was destined from the beginning to go underappreciated this year, which is often the case with Kelly Reichardt as a filmmaker. I think that if I have any complaint, I don't think this stands with like the best of her movies, just because it is a little more slight, I think, than her best work. It's very much like a smaller stakes kind of movie that is still like really beautiful, I think, and profound and funny and kind of sad. And it has a great lead performance by Michelle Williams and a great supporting turn from Hong Chow, who are 2 actors who I really like. And it's nice to see Hong Chow actually be in a good movie. I feel like she's had a really rough track record because she's a great actress. I've always liked her, but she just doesn't sometimes she's attached to projects I just don't resonate with. The Whale being the most recent. And yeah, this movie is just really, really great from beginning to end. And I might like it better on a rewatch. That's often the case with Kelly Reichardt films, but yeah, I highly recommend it. And it just seems like, once again, it's kind of gone under the radar, and I hope people check it out.
Yeah, it's one I haven't actually been able to see yet. Unfortunately, I like you. I really like Kelly Reichardt, and I was kind of bummed when I didn't get a chance to see it. But yeah, it's still not available for streaming, which was interesting because it's kind of been out for a little bit. But yeah, Kelly Reichardt and Michelle Williams is always a good combination, so you can't really go wrong there.
Yeah. A24, make your movies available for people to watch, please. Like it is honestly ridiculous
It is
how
weird.
hard it
I
is to watch showing up.
Yeah, it played in no theaters around me,
Mm-hmm.
and then immediately went to premium VOD. And I know premium VOD is a big deal, but I'm not paying $20 to see a movie. I'm sorry, I'm cheap. I'll wait for streaming. I try to support all these movies in theaters, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Life happens, and so for now, no showing up for me. You could say I'm not showing up,
Yeah, I guess.
but
Can't win them
I'm
all.
probably, I'm gonna cut that because that's a horrible joke. But we'll move on to the movie that I wanted to mention off the bat here which is Reality, which is I guess the Sydney Sweeney vehicle about reality winner. I guess the what would you call her? The whistleblower from, I guess, a few years ago from the NSA. Very interesting movie. It's based off of a play of, I think that what the director's name is it Tina Satter? I'm gonna look it up right now. Yeah, Tina Satter. This is her directorial debut, and she based this off of her own play. And I find it really, really interesting because what this movie is just basically the transcript of when the FBI showed up to Reality Winner's house and started to question her, and it's that word for word. And the movie makes sure that you understand that because it shows like the manuscript being written as the movie is playing out. But I think it's a really interesting case in how direct, I guess, adaptation actually can have a lot of merit and have a lot of cinematic quality to it. I think it's a bit of a meta reasoning for why I really like this movie, but I think when there's an adaptation, there are so many times where we kind of talk about like what is historically accurate, what isn't, when does that matter, when does it not. And I think this movie is a really interesting case on how you can literally take the wording from real life, just word for word, and stylize it and make it really interesting and create a lot of tension out of random conversations. Because I think that's the big thing that I take away from this movie. Because even in your movies that are more, I guess, historically accurate in how they portray real life events, they're still stylizing the dialogue. They're making things a little slicker, making people sound, I guess, smarter and a little zippier in a writing sort of way, and how they talk to each other. But here in this movie, you have Sydney Sweeney kind of talking with agents played by Josh Hamilton and Marshawn Davis, who there's a lot of there's a lot of awkward pauses, basically just how normal people talk. And then when you bring in this weird situation, like you bring in all those weird kind of tiny little bits to it as well when people are stammering. And it creates a lot of tension out of that. And I think that's something that I find really interesting and that I haven't seen a lot of movies do. So I really liked this movie. It's like 80 minutes, which is another just way to my heart immediately. But I really, really liked this movie. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, cool movie. Really cool movie. I like I always planned to watch this. Like it kind of dropped. It felt like out of nowhere, and then seeing it was on
Yeah.
your top five, I made it a priority before this podcast. Uh, yeah, it's funny. The FBI agent and agents and Reality Winner, like they should have gotten screenwriting credits because, like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
literally
that's
just
funny.
word for word the dialogue, which is a really interesting thing. Like, I feel like that's something that could have failed catastrophically, but
Absolutely.
like you said, it it makes it so tense and the interaction feels so real, and you have this knowledge throughout the movie. They make it very clear that that's what's happening throughout the duration of this interaction with reality and these FBI agents. And I think it becomes like this really, really interesting kind of examination of, yeah, like power and
Mm-hmm.
how power is exercised over normal people by these institutions. And yeah, I thought Sydney Sweeney was, that's her name, right? Yeah, Sydney Sweeney. I thought she was great in the movie. And I love the way that the movie's shot. Like I feel like it's very tense, and there's a lot of claustrophobia with the
Yep.
way that it's shot. There's the second half of the movie essentially plays out in this one room. And the movie never felt like it got boring with the way that it shot that room. Like it felt like it was finding interesting ways to kind of portray this situation throughout that. And yeah, the I thought in particular Josh Hamilton gave a really like chilling performance
He's
to me
good.
because
He's really good in this.
yeah, yeah, he like manages to like he's that type of officer who's like you're like, oh, this guy seems like the nice one, and then he like can turn ice cold on an instant. And I just thought he was really, really effective in the role. So I agree, it's an awesome movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting look at, like you said, power dynamics because they are taking word for word what these people are doing, but there's a lot of things that are still aren't done. Like her Miranda rights are not read. You can kind of see how they're kind of leading her into like choosing specific things to like options for herself. It's really fascinating, and I really dug it. So I thought that was really cool, and I think that's on the artist formerly known as HBO Max right now for anybody who wants to stream it. But
That's right.
we'll move on from there. What's another one that you wanted to mention here?
So my number four movie is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is the new film from Kelly Fremon Craig, who directed and wrote, I believe, Edge of 17
Yep.
a couple years ago with Haley Steinfeld. And this is another coming of age movie. The lead character of this movie is quite a bit younger. It's about a 11-year-old girl who is about to undergo the awkward time period of puberty. And it's kind of follows her and this group of friends, and this movie blew me away. Like when I went to the theater, I was expecting something probably solid because I really enjoyed The Edge of 17. Like I was really curious to see how Kelly Fremon Craig's follow-up to that film would be. And I feel like this film exceeded my expectations in every single way. I think that it's interesting because this is another movie that didn't perform all that well at the box office. And I think that's a shame because I feel the subject matter of this movie is timeless in a way that it everyone goes through being a teenager, and like the trials and the awkwardness and the changes that all of that brings with it. And this is a film that captures it in such an honest and hilarious and touching way. I feel like it's a movie that like every teenage girl, like it's no question they should watch it because I think there's a lot of truth to be mined from this movie. And yeah, I was blown away. Like at the end of the movie, I'm like, crying over a girl like going through puberty, like this a scene in like between the mom and the daughter. And yeah, I just love the movie. I think the lead actress, whose name is Abby Ryder Forston, is awesome in the movie. She's great. Rachel McAdams plays her mom. She's fantastic. Benny Safdie of the Safdie brothers
My
plays her
guy.
dad, and he's great in the movie. Like just everyone in it just totally knocks it out of the park. And yeah, I could not recommend this movie more. I think it's great. It's wholesome. It like any age can watch it basically. So
Yeah.
strong, highest possible recommendation.
Yet another movie that is not available for streaming yet, and it bothers me. That I think there was that came out right around the same time as Showing Up, and who knows what I was doing then. But haven't been able to see either of these movies, and they're two that I've been high on my list to see for a while. So I'm hoping to get around to Are You There, God in a minute, because I agree with
You
you,
just
Judy
hate
Blumen's.
women.
That's it. That's it. I hate women. You can cut this out of this pod, put it on Twitter. Put it out of context for everybody to hear. That's it
Cancel.
right there. Damn, it's been a good ride. It's been a good ride for
That's
Movie
right.
Babble, but I guess we're done here.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to that movie for quite a while, quite a long time. Edge of 17 is a kind of a favorite of mine. One of the first movies I actually saw when I started this website. I really liked that movie quite a bit. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. We'll move on to another one of my favorites this year, which is I think just speaks to my sicko nature because that is Skinamarink, my beloved
Mm.
Skinamarink. Really cool how this movie even got into theaters. I guess it was leaked out of one of the festivals when it played at last year, and it became a creepy pasta esque sensation on TikTok. I think this movie cost like $15,000 and from Kyle Edward Ball, the director. And then it just played in theaters this January, and it was kind of amazing to see such an abstract, non, I guess, linear, just horror art piece. I don't even know what you call this thing, but just play this being played in AMC theaters, and people like there was a lot of people in my screening of this movie, so it was just really heartening to see this movie happen and be a thing. And it is just what I think. It seems like it's one of those movies that plays really well on your computer. Just the way it's set up, it does seem kind of like a slight creepy pasta and how it's constructed. But it worked really well in the theaters for me. I was really horrified watching this entire thing, and I've been thinking a lot about this movie recently because I feel like horror is in a really interesting spot, and I know for like the longest time, elevated horror was like I guess like the leading I guess moniker of where horror was, which I've always hated that phrase. I think it's really annoying, and it also just kind of discourages all other horror because horror's always had ideas in it, and the fact that like A24 packaged a lot of these movies together made it so that people saw it differently. But that was just never the case. But all of them did have signifiers where they're very atmospheric. I guess high-minded from auteurs that we've gone on to love. And Skinamarink feels like whatever the next iteration of this is. It feels like post elevated horror, where it's more abstract. It's a combination of internet iconography, 70 low budget 70s like grain in terms of how it's filmed, and it's just and this just I guess it follows somewhat of like a plot, but it's really just like a plotless sensory experience. So I don't even know how to describe this movie. I guess it's just two kids wake up and all the walls or all the windows and doors are gone in their house, and there's a demon in their house. And that's kind of it. And it's really creepy. Yeah, love Skinamarink. This movie's really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. It is truly one of the most singular movies I've seen in a while, and I think it deserves additional credit just for that. But I know you love this movie as well. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this is another one. Like, you know, it was really hard picking my top five, honestly, because I really wanted to put Skinamarink in there. But yeah, I knew you would talk about it, so it's like just I can talk about it too. This movie is incredible. Like, I can't believe I was able to go to a theater and watch this movie earlier this year,
It's
kind of like you
crazy.
talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With like the
just
state of where
because,
theaters are, it is just so wild that this thing
yeah,
played in big multiplexes.
just something this abstract and weird and just unconventional. There was like this 50 plus couple who came into Skinamarink when me and my fiance were sitting next to each other and we were like making bets like will they make it through the movie? And they did. Like I was mind blown by the end of it just because I found the movie to be very uh what's the word I want to use? I found to be very experimental and slow
Definitely.
paced, but very effective for me. And I yeah, I also think this movie's horrifying. Like
Truly terrifying.
I was terrified watching this movie. And it's one of those movies that it's just the way it gets under your skin. Like I think I wrote this in like my letterbox review when the movie came out. When I was a kid, there would be times where I was in bed and I would see a shadow on the wall, and if I looked at the
Yep.
shadow long enough, I would convince myself that I was seeing a face in the wall. And this is a movie that is about that feeling, like
Yep.
100% about that feeling. It captures these childhood fears and these anxieties that you have, because that you mentioned the plot, what the very loosely called the plot, but the kids waking up in this house that the doors and the windows are gone. That's already a terrifying setup and
It's
concept that
so
you think of.
weird too. It's like
Yes.
weirdly detailed in a way.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's just very
The, way-
bizarre.
yeah, the way they execute it is very strange, but it then it's just this escalation of this panic and this terror and this feeling that you're not alone when you're in the dark. Like I think that it's truly one of a kind, truly original, in its form and its style. And I also can't recommend the movie enough. Even if you don't know if you'll like that, I think it's worth giving it a shot just because it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a classic movie that a random person sees and it's like, hey, nothing happens.
Yeah.
um, but I do declare that everything happens and it's horrifying. It makes me terrified of like those old boob lights that you see in houses. My house has a
Hmm.
bunch of those. So like the night I'm looking up at mine right now, but the night I saw the movie, I was looking up at that at night and I was like, oh, that's great. It's really great.
Yeah.
It's a movie that makes you really terrified about the corners of walls. So I don't know how it
Yeah.
did that, but it was really successful. So Skinamarink is really good, and I believe it's streaming on Shudder right now. It's for anybody who's interested in seeing it.
Indeed. Indeed it is.
What's your next movie here, Spencer? What do you got for me?
My number three is Of an Age, which is the new film from my guy Goran Stolevsky, who did You Won't Be Alone last year. This is one that our fellow movie babbler Sean Coates was telling me about last year when he saw it at Melbourne Film Fest. He's like, "Have you seen it yet?" Like, no, I've had no chance or opportunity to see
I
it.
don't live in Australia. No.
Yeah, and he was just building my hype throughout the year, I suppose, until I was able to see it in February. And it could not be more different than You Won't Be Alone. This is stylistically very different. The subject matter of the movie is very different. It's essentially a brief encounter film, which I already love. Like I eat that genre up, about these two men. One is a younger a man, and the other one's kind of in college, and they kind of have a spark of romance over the course of basically about 24 hours. I feel like it's
Hmm.
basically a day into the night, and then the next day it kind of ends, and then we get a kind of epilogue to it later in the film. I thought this movie was great. I thought that the performances were awesome in the movie. It felt really natural with the way that these people conversed, and the dynamics and the like just rawness of the movie I really loved, which was something I also loved about You Won't Be Alone. Um and yeah, I think it's completely worth watching, and it is my number three. So yeah.
This was one I caught up with last night actually, and I think I'm on the opposite side of you, where I guess Gorn is not my guy because this makes two in a row where I haven't weirdly clicked with his movies, even though they should be entirely my shit. You know, like I feel like You Won't Be Alone, which is basically like the Tree of Life, but a weird witch movie, and that sounds amazing to me. And weirdly, it didn't work for me. I know you loved it, and this movie was similar, where it was like I love these brief encounter movies. It's obviously heavily influenced by Wong Kar Wai. It mentions Happy Together by name in within the proceedings. Um, I don't know what it is with this guy. I like his vision. I like it. I see the vision, and for some reason, these movies just haven't clicked with me. I don't know what it is yet. I feel like I haven't been quite able to figure it out yet. But I like that you recommended it because I know people really like this movie, and I think I'm definitely in the minority on it.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like maybe there's just something about his style or his writing that you don't like.
I don't know
I
what it
wonder what
is.
it is. Yeah.
I mean, with this movie, it felt like the brief encounter was more contrived than I wanted it to be.
Hmm.
It felt like the characters were in support of this, like creating the plot devices for this brief encounter, rather than them feeling like they were people to me in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's the other thing though. I feel like that's kind of like a pretty minor, like I guess like dig at it, but it just drove me crazy. I don't know. So I don't know what it is with this guy. I looked at his like whatever his next movie is, and it sounds like it would be great. So I'm hoping it is. So I don't know. This might just be a personal therapy session for me. I need to just do a solo podcast talking about the films of Goran Stolevsky later on this year,
Yeah.
because I don't know.
It's
I
an
don't know
it's
what it
an
is. It just doesn't work for me.
it's an open question if you'll ever like a Goran Stolevsky film. So we'll never know until the next
We'll
one.
never know until the
Yeah.
next one comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to my next film, which I'm gonna go with the crowd pleaser here. I'm gonna go with Across the Spider Verse, which follow up to Into the Spider Verse. You know, I'm a cynical asshole when it comes to superhero movies these days, but this movie rules. So does Into the Spider Verse. Can't wait for Beyond the Spider Verse now that it's not Across Spider Verse Part 2 anymore. These movies just rule. They are like, it's funny because this came out right around the same time as The Flash, and The Flash is like the exact same movie, and except it's just horrible. This movie's awesome. This like it's just shows there's just so much creativity in this movie, and it's the way that we are kind of in this stage of superhero movies where they're eating their own tail in the whole multiverse storyline, where it's the multiverse can only be about previous iterations of the superhero. So we're just bringing back old Michael Keaton, or we're bringing back Tobey Maguire or whatnot. We're just bringing all of these things back once again. And this movie just feels like such a breath of fresh air because it looks at the multiverse opportunity and says like, we can just do anything and we're going to do that. And so there's like billions of Spider-Men flying all over the screen, and there's like subtitles in the movie like explaining what like British punk slang means. It's just really, it's really cool, super inventive. It does not have an ending, which kind of sucks, but that's okay for now because the rest of the movie is really good, and it kind of just shows what you maybe all multiverse superhero movies should be animated, because it shows you what it can be, because every universe is animated differently, differently stylized. It's just really cool, super creative, and kind of like a crowning example of what animation can do for the superhero genre. It's just really impressive. So there's the cold open of this movie is Spider-Gwen fighting a Da Vinci vulture. So that's great. So what more do you need out of a movie when you get that in your first 10 minutes of it? So the really great movie.
Awesome movie. I agree. However, I agree that the movie doesn't have an ending, and it also only one character really gets a like arc in this
Yep,
movie.
totally agree.
Um, so I don't know. I thought while I was watching it, I honestly did not realize that this film was going to be such a first half of a movie. So, but like the last 20 minutes were coming up, I was like, holy, they have a ton they need to wrap
Yeah,
up.
nothing has been wrapped up yet.
Yeah, and they're setting up more plot threads, and we're 2 hours into this movie. And I should have known just with the nature of how these serialized events happen these days that there was going to be a sequel to this movie. um However, despite all those complaints I just said, I think as a cliffhanger the movie is really effective. Like the way
Yeah,
that they handle the cliffhanger, like I wanted immediately when the credits started rolling to see the next movie. Like, I was thoroughly entertained by this movie. It's inventive as hell. There's a chase sequence that is maybe the best action scene I've ever seen in a superhero movie. It's just stunningly gorgeous and entertaining and exciting throughout. And yeah, you said, you brought up the Flash. It's like, it makes me sick to my stomach that we have a superhero movie in theaters of this quality that is this good, and then we have the Flash as well in the theaters.
Horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it boggles my mind that something this good can exist at the same time as something as lackluster as
Yeah.
the Flash.
And it's so frustrating because, like I said, be like all of these multiverse stories are like the same movie over and over again. Um, and I love how this movie is. It's very much about storytelling and how there's like these.
Yeah,
Like, it's about these canon events. Like no matter what
canon,
Spider-Man
yep.
you are, these have to happen. And we'll see where that ends up. I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to do a great job with it. But I love how this movie is very much about why do we have to keep telling these same stories over and over again, and why can't we do something different and use like these limitless possibilities and actually do limitless things with them. So I thought that was just a really cool stroke of meta commentary throughout the movie as well, and especially just
And
when.
and can I add on that, like piggybacking off that, the villain of the Spot in the movie, I
Oh,
loved
great.
how it was kind of did the meta, like, oh, he's just like this villain of the week, and he becomes this, by the end of the movie, he is a genuine threat. And
Yeah.
it's like, I thought that all that was really fun, the way that you have this one meta element of the canon, and we all know the canon of Spider-Man, and they take this formula that we all know and that we're all kind of tired of, honestly, and they make it feel interesting and fresh again. And they it feels like, yeah, they're gonna comment on that and give it a purpose. But then it's like, yeah, you have a throwaway villain who they turn into one of the coolest visual
Yeah.
and scary and just incredibly inventive villains I've seen in a superhero movie in a minute. And it's like, we haven't even seen, I think, barely anything of him, really. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the
Yeah.
second half of this story is going to be really satisfying, I think, with all that.
Yeah, Jason Schwartzman's voice work as the
Mm-hmm.
Spot is awesome.
It
I
is.
laughed so hard at the his whole revelation where he's like, "Oh, I need more holes," and he's doing it in his Jason Schwartzman voice, and it's really funny. So yeah, all the voice work is like ridiculously good. Like it shows this is the difference between like the famous person doing the voice work role for like a good paycheck, and you can really feel like the great work that's going on here. It's just really great. So yeah, you've probably seen this movie, but worth a watch if you haven't. So yeah, Across the Spider Verse
Indeed.
is a really good movie. I did have a bit of an existential crisis watching it, with the fact of struggling with it not having an ending, and the whole like TVification of movies that we've kind of seen with just like the MCU kind of starting that. But you know, that's a conversation for another day. This movie's still pretty sick. So we'll move
Yeah.
on. What's your next movie you wanted to mention?
The next movie I want to mention, which is my number two, is Beau is Afraid.
Yes.
This is the new Ari Aster picture. It's actually interesting that you bring up elevated horror earlier in this discussion, because this is like, it feels like Ari Aster listened to our conversations about, oh, Hereditary and Midsummer, those are elevated horror, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna make something that defies description and alienates the people who were saying, oh, but Ari Aster is like one of the good ones when it comes to horror. uh I truly think that this movie is bold. It's constantly interesting. It is exhausting, and it is horrifying. It's hilarious, laugh out loud funny. It features incredible performances, and I loved every minute of it. And all that said, I don't know if I ever want to watch this movie again. Just because it's it's a movie that I think deliberately tries to test the viewer's patience.
Yep, absolutely.
It's there's a sequence in about the middle of the movie that like the movie takes a 20-minute detour that goes into like this animated play,
Oh, it's so
which is
funny.
incredible. It's
Oh,
incredible.
so funny. The punchline to that is so good. It's so,
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. It's just like you feel like you go on a like Lord of the Rings level journey by the end of this movie. Um, I think if I have any minor complaint about this movie, it's that I don't think that the second half is as brilliant as the first half of the movie. Like the first hour of this movie is just wall to wall genius, great filmmaking. There is some just of the funniest stuff I've seen in a movie in a really long time. And it just completely feels like, oh my goodness, like he's like you feel like you're watching Ari Aster's like masterpiece, like his magnum opus. And
Yeah.
then the second half, I still love it. Like I still thought it was hilarious and really fun and entertaining. But there's like I guess the movie is all leading up to kind of like you said, a punchline separate from the punchline you're talking about that I think feels kind of slightly obvious with I think what the like it feels like by the end of it you're like okay I understand where the movie's heading and then the big reveal it's kind of like okay yeah uh but still like so much fun and so wildly crazy and bizarre and yeah just like I said hilarious. I thought I laughed my butt off in this movie.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. I really like this movie too. Um, I love that, I've read a lot of interviews with Ari Aster, and he considers Hereditary a horror movie. And Midsommar, he's like, I kind of look at that movie. It's just like a breakup comedy, which I'm like, oh, I can kind of see that. I think that movie's actually really funny too.
Oh yeah.
Will Poulter's doing a lot of really good comedy in
Yep.
that movie.
He's amazing.
And then he just is like, you guys think I'm this horror guy, and I'm just not going to do that anymore with this movie. So he's just off doing his own thing, which honestly makes me more excited. Like I am fascinated to see what his next movie is, which I know is kind of like this like neo noir western with Joaquin again. He just feels like he's just going to go out and just make whatever he wants now that are like genre defying and genre bending all the same time. So I'm really excited about that. And this movie, yeah, it's really funny. One of my favorite bits is in the beginning when Joaquin has to take these pills, and
Oh
he doesn't take water with it, and then he searches like take I took these pills with no water like effects, and then it like just like the first Google search is just like this obituary where it's like remembering John.
yeah.
It's really
The
it's
side
really
effects
funny.
death. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's really funny. There's so many, and especially in that first like cityscape like sequence, there are so many great little details. It's really amazing production design.
Incredible.
Like if the Oscars actually made sense, like this would get a production design nod
Oh,
because it's
yeah.
just so impressive. Especially with like all the animation you talked about, which is from the same directors that did my favorite, The Wolf House, that came out a few years ago. They worked on
Oh,
the
I didn't know
animation for
that.
that. Yeah,
Awesome.
they did the animation for that movie
That
or
makes
that
sense.
section. So it's really good. And then I do love. I don't want to spoil it here, but I do love the final joke, which is playing through the end credits. It's really funny. Basically, him just mirroring everybody's reaction to like watching this movie. It's just really funny. I laughed really hard as I was just sitting in the theater after sitting through this 3 hour
Yeah.
long whatever this is. So I really got a good kick out of this movie. I think it kind of just it pleased all of my weird senses of humor. So I'm with you. I think this movie is really good.
Do you agree that it's an exhausting movie though?
Oh,
Like
absolutely. Oh,
when you
totally.
got to the end where you just like I felt like I had basically been hit by a train.
Hmm.
Like I was just like I don't want to watch anything else today even though I had a great time watching it if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. You're right because it's 3 hours long. It is punishing, but also like there's the whole Mariah Carey bit, which is really funny.
Oh my,
It's
yeah.
like there's a lot of really funny moments in this movie that I'll probably rewatch. Like this might be weirdly like a good YouTube movie where you just like watch a scene kind
Yeah.
of thing.
No, for
I
sure.
mean, and it's
For
also
sure.
it's a very episodic movie by design too, so it
Yep.
kind of works for that. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know when the next time I'll be cranking up Beau is Afraid, but I really enjoyed the first experience. Yeah, we'll move on from there over to my next movie, which is RMN, or MRI in English, I guess, directed by. Do you know how to say his name? Is it Christian Monju? I've never heard his name out loud, but he's one of our best directors.
Yeah, I honestly don't know his. I should know his name, but I
Yeah, it's
don't.
tough. I'm like, you are one of our best directors working, and I don't know how to say your name out loud. But
Hmm.
we'll call him Christian M for now. Really good movie, RMN, which is, I guess, it's not like a hyperlink movie, but it is essentially a very in-depth, almost microscopic study of racism, of nationalism in this very small Transylvanian village. Basically, this guy, he's working abroad in a German factory. He gets fired after headbutting his boss and comes back to his town. And in his own town, there's one bakery that is basically operating all of the jobs for the town, and they're bringing in a couple foreigners. I think they're from Sri Lanka, Sri
Yep.
Lankan immigrants, to kind of work in the factory because of all of these crazy quirks in the EU, where if this factory applies for this grant, they have to get this grant money, they have to have a specific amount of employees, but they can't afford it at the specific salary, so they have to bring in immigrants who will work for less. So it creates this really vicious cycle of anger and resentment and frustration among the townsfolk. And it's really just a really fascinating look at how kind of best intentions and a lot of practices have in globalization around the world have led to just a lot of resentment and a lot of backlash in a post 2016 election world, to immigration, to just other cultures, to the idea of people stealing your jobs, like all of these things. It's a really fascinating look about how have we grown and we've gone more global. We've actually become more insular. So it's a really interesting look at that, and it all leads to this 20-minute long unbroken take town hall sequence where everybody in the town is talking to the mayor and saying how they should not allow the Sri Lankan immigrants to work in the town anymore, or else they'll basically revolt. And it's just the camera never moves, and you are just studying all these people and all of their reactions to everything, and it is just really good. It's really good filmmaking. So I think this movie is really good, and I think it's kind of one of the most, I guess, it's a really good modern text of where we find ourselves in a lot of places. I just think it's really deft, and it's not. I think in a lot of ways, I think I mentioned this in my review of the movie on the site. There's people like Adam McKay and Aaron Sorkin who are trying to kind of explain the current moment, and they're doing it in very big broad strokes, and that way it kind of seems very pandering and frustrating. But with this movie, it is like very deep down in the minutia, where it's there's like multiple conversations about these weird like EU grants that caused like this issue, as like I mentioned before. It's very in the muck, and it really understands how these bureaucratic decisions kind of lead to just fear and hate among just your regular folk. It is a really, really interesting movie.
Yeah. So from this filmmaker, uh, whose name I'm not gonna say because I'll butcher as well.
We've butchered it enough already.
Yeah, yeah. I've only actually seen 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days prior to RMN, and what I'll say is that I actually think this movie is quite a bit less subtle than 4 months, 3 weeks, and two
Oh,
days.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, but when I kind of think of it, like I these issues that it's following, they're not subtle at all. Like that, I think that's one of the reasons is because we're following the people who are vocally anti-immigration, who are nationalists, which is just a nice way to say I'm a racist.
Yep.
They they're not subtle people. Like they're full-throated racist, and this movie is a exploration and an indictment of that kind of a culture. And I think one of the most effective parts of this movie is that a lot of the people who are leveling this racism towards these Sri Lankans, they're people who aren't even originally from the country
Yep.
where it takes place themselves, Romania. And I think that that's just really like fascinating about how interesting is how hypocritical these issues often are. And that scene you talk about, this climax of the movie, it's truly, like you said, an extraordinary sequence because, as you mentioned, you're just watching this issue stew and you're watching how people react to the situation and how they try to either defend or attack the issue in really, really interesting ways, particularly between kind of the two lead characters. There's like a whole story going on between them. And then
Hmm.
there's a whole entire story in the backdrop of the shot with like the townsfolk. And there's people who are saying things that, oh, I'm with you on this issue, but I'm against you on this other issue. And it's just really, I think, a really intelligent portrayal of kind of, yeah, like what in America we call like a town hall, where there's so much animosity, and these things are often just this pressure machine that's waiting to just explode. And I will also say that the final like 3 minutes of this movie are just crazy. Like I still am
Yeah.
thinking about them trying to figure out what the movie is even trying to say, like in those final 3 minutes. I think that that's the sign of like a great and effective and compelling piece of art for me, is when I'm still thinking about it like a week now after having seen the movie. So
Yeah, it takes a little dip into the surreal, and it's a point where I'm like, wait, did I miss a scene? Like, what's happening here? Like,
yeah, same.
it's very chaotic, and you're like, wait, what is going on here? And then it ends. You're like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's something I'm still trying to parse through as well. But like you said, I think I do agree where this movie isn't necessarily subtle, but I think it's really deft in the way it's kind of describing and showing the movie. It's very observational. Like I said, that one scene, the camera never moves. It is just observing these people as they're yelling in this town hall session, and a lot of the time, like the camera is moving as little as possible. It's just trying to. It's basically just locked down and just observing all these characters move around in the space that you see. So it's, even though it obviously has a point of view, it's not imparting its point of view on you as the viewer. You are trying to understand these people and their thought processes, and I think it does a really good job. I think it's a really, really good, just, yeah, it's a really good example of everything it's trying to accomplish. It's just a really solid movie. But I think we'll move on from there to, I guess, our last movie, which we both share on here, because I feel like this is kind of a consensus beloved movie of the beginning of the year.
Number
Well,
one.
yeah, definitely. I think Skinamarink, if I'm going to be honest, is my number one if I was going to
Yeah.
rank these. But, that's fine with me. We'll lead to. We like to have a nice endings here where there's symmetry, there's things, we're coming together. So the last movie that both you and I share here is Past Lives. And I think this is your favorite movie of the year, so why don't you kind of take it from the start?
Yeah. Like I hadn't seen a trailer for this movie. I didn't even really know what it was about. I just heard that people were really, really liking this movie, and we got to see this movie a little bit early, which was fun and exciting. This is the directorial debut of Celine Song, and it follows Nora and Haesung, who are these two originally from Korea, uh, Korean people who they were childhood sweethearts, and then Nora ends up immigrating to Canada with her family, and then later in her life to New York, and they reconnect after about a decade, and then about another decade after that, he comes to visit the United States, and it is kind of just about that. And this is a beautiful movie.
Yeah, really good.
It's yeah, it's prior to the movie, the director, there was like a live stream where she was speaking about the movie, and she said that this is a film that's about the question, what if? And kind of how stirring that question can be to a human being, because there's all these interactions that we have with people, or these encounters that we have with people, where we wonder, what if that would have gone kind of a different way, or what if my life would have went a different way and I would have ended up here rather than here. And it's just a really compelling question to explore through film. And the on top of that, the movie, kind of alluding to the title, it introduces this concept of Inyon, which is a Korean concept that kind of talks about how the people who we share interactions with throughout our lives are people who potentially we've interacted with in our past lives. And the concept of reincarnation, where you're reconnecting with these people over and over again, throughout many different lives. And I think that that's a really beautiful kind of question. One of my favorite movies is Cloud Atlas. It explores this as well. And yeah, the performance in particular by Yu Teo, who plays Hae Sung, is extraordinary in this
Really
movie.
good.
I think he is like deserving of an Oscar nomination for his performance in this film. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and call the shot and say he should get one, because I think that he is just so good in this movie. And the movie, what I found almost the most impressive about it is it's a movie that I did not realize was affecting me in the way that it was, until it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, the final 5 minutes of this movie, or even the final 10 minutes of this movie, but
It sneaks
particularly
up
those
on you.
last 5 minutes, yeah, are just like a gut punch. Like, it hits you like a freight train. So much so, actually, that a guy seated behind us at the screening, he straight up didn't sound okay. He was like full throated, sobbing, head down. Like, we turned around, looked back, and his head was straight up down, and he was sobbing. It was so nuts. Like, I've never seen somebody cry that hard in a movie in my life. Um, and I get it. Like, I was like, just there were like tears coming down my cheeks, and I I think it's I think it's incredible. It joins the ranks of like my favorite uh kind of I'll kind of consider this a brief encounter movie. And say that I think that
Yeah.
this stands shoulder to shoulder with the best of them in my mind. And I literally can't wait to revisit this movie and go back and watch it
Yeah,
again. So
maybe that guy has his own Hey Sung. You know,
yeah,
he's going through a lot of feelings in his
yeah,
life right now.
I think
Yeah,
so. I think you're right. I think he did.
it is interesting because it is one of those movies where it really, you ask the question of what if, but it makes you kind of start to get existential about your own life and think about all your
Yep.
what ifs and whatnot, and maybe even think about things that weren't necessarily like you think of big tipping points, but now you're like, oh yeah, maybe that was a big deal that I made this decision instead of that one. So it is one of those movies where it makes you think a lot, even not necessarily about the movie itself. Yeah, this movie's really good. I want to revisit it as well because it didn't it didn't like kill me. Like I wasn't like sobbing at the end of the movie, and I was really excited for it to do that to me. But I was like, ooh, I really like you see all the thing, like all the writing, all the like the kind of pieces come together, and you're like, oh wow, this is really well done. So I have a feeling it might hit even harder the second time for me. Yeah, Greta Lee in the lead role as Nora is awesome. I kind of just want her. She's one of those people where I just want her in everything now. She's really great.
She's
I,
awesome. Yeah.
I think she actually has a voice role in in Across the Spider Verse. So good for
Oh,
her.
wow.
But yeah, it's another movie that's very heavily indebted to Wong Kar Wai. You think of In the Mood for
Oh
Love
yeah.
a lot during this movie, which is funny because RMN also has a very noticeable callback to In the Mood for Love, where it's playing the main theme. That one of the lead characters
Yeah.
is playing that on her cello.
Yep.
So I guess this generation being very influenced by Wong Kar Wai. Who knows? Maybe something to monitor moving forward. I just stumbled into a grand theory here on the podcast live. Who's to say?
Genius.
But yeah, it's obviously In the Mood for Love. All these like you said, Brief Encounter movies. It's still very heavily indebted to, but it
Before
feels like
Sunset.
yeah, definitely
I got
Before
big
Sunset.
Before Sunset vibes, yeah.
It's it feels like it is like the a great update to all those movies because it is also a movie about technology because it's it's like these people reconnect over
Yep.
Facebook and are talking over Skype for years. That's how they're connecting. So it's a really good modern like version of this kind of movie without feeling like it's like it doesn't feel like its attempts to talk about technology are the point or like overbearing like it is with so many other movies that want to talk about technology and as part of everyday lives. It's just something that happens, and this situation was created out of it. So I thought that was really like just really really smart in how this movie was written. I don't who knows what would happen Oscar wise, but I really think this is a good chance of getting like a best like screenplay nom. Like one of the cool movies that gets not a writing nom but doesn't win anything, but it's like a We See You kind of thing,
Yeah.
nomination. That's probably where I see this movie going. But it is really good. It is a really really good movie.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't think UTO is gonna get
Yeah, he
a
should,
best
but he
actor nom,
won't.
but he
Yeah,
should. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Like I just want to make it clear, I want him to, but he won't. Yeah. One more thing I want to mention about this movie is the editing, the way that it in times uses memory. They're like split seconds of memory, like a shot from the past, to kind of show how the past and the present are mirroring each other or kind of colliding, and evoke feeling. I think it's just like a really beautifully edited film as well. And even though
definitely.
it's not like showy with its editing, but it just really connects and hits you, I think. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's really good. I think it's the consensus best movie of the year for people who see a lot of movies. I would say
yeah,
like it is
yeah,
like
it
it is
does
up
seem
there.
that way. Yeah.
It seems like it has like a like the like everybody is in on it. It's like 100% like approval for this movie. I haven't seen any take where they're like, actually, this movie has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen that take yet. I would love to read it because it's probably crazy.
Yeah, I kind of would be interested to hear that too. Just
Yeah.
I hate past lives.
Yeah, that's one of those. That would be one of those things where, like, if you had that in conversation, someone was like, "Yeah, fuck that movie," you'd be like, "Wait, what?
Yeah.
Please explain. I
I'm
want to hear
sorry.
more."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So Past Lives is really really good. Before we get out of here, you want to talk about any honorable mentions you had? Any movies you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, John Wick. I didn't put it on my list because it's the biggest movie ever. It just made so much money that I'm like, you saw it, you saw John Wick. You don't need me to tell you to watch John Wick. So that's why I didn't
Yeah,
have it on here.
it's another hot take. John Wick 4 is pretty good. A
Yeah,
lot of good.
exactly.
Yeah, the John Wick is sick. I love that movie.
Yeah,
All of these movies
it's
continue
awesome.
to make more than the one before it, which is really fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just like it's almost 3 hours of John Wick kicking ass, and it's really great. So
Who doesn't want that for real?
yeah,
It's just like it's going to be good, and it was good. So yeah,
yeah,
it would be
just,
boring for me to
just
say.
amazing. Yeah, I had a few movies I wanted to mention. I really enjoyed Blackberry, which is
Hmm.
the next one in the long line of movies about a corporate entity in some way. Except I feel like this is one where it's not like a company hagiography. It's not like everybody who did this was great. They were great people and they built a great thing. And
Yeah.
yay capitalism. It's just you have Glenn Howerton in here who as a 20-something-year-old guy, I watched a lot of Always Sunny in my
Same.
many years, so it's just great to see him in movies, and he's just an absolute maniac in this movie in his very obvious bald cap, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, he's incredible in it.
Yeah, he's just
so
screaming
good.
at the top of his lungs. He's really,
Yep.
really good. Jay Baruchel's really good in it. It's really a really, really funny movie and really interesting story as well. It's just, I love it. It's such a, and the punchline of, Apple or Steve Jobs showing off the iPhone is just so funny. It's really funny for all of these things these people did, it amounted to nothing in the end. It's really really funny. That movie's great. I also really liked Rye Lane. I don't know if you got a chance to see this one.
Did not know.
It is probably one of the better rom-coms I've can remember watching. It is another one of these. I think it's like 80 minutes long. It's really good. There's a lot of before trilogy vibes in here as well, where it's very much just like a walk and talk through London, and it is just really great. It's all vibes. It's if the first hour of this movie is just incredible vibes all around, where it's just incredible acting, incredible visual storytelling and editing, and then it has to be a rom-com and have a rom-com third act where there's there's like contrivance to get these people to be angry at each other, and it's a whole deal then, so that part of it is not what isn't amazing, but it's good enough where these people are so just charming that you don't really care too much. But the first hour of this movie is just, as we all say, it's immaculate vibes. It's just really great vibes all around. So I really recommend that one. But
Sounds cool.
yeah. Any movies you wish you got a chance to see that you didn't get a chance to see so far?
Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. No, I'm excited to see No Hard Feelings, which I haven't had the chance to see yet because I heard that was
Yeah, me
actually
too.
pretty fun. Yeah,
Me too.
so
I didn't get a chance to see Asteroid City yet.
yeah, it's good. Really liked it.
Because I'm one of those people that really likes The French Dispatch, and when people keep saying that Wes Anderson gets more and more, I guess, abstract, I'm like, that sounds great. It sounds great to me, because I was one of the guys who was like, this French Dispatch was one of his best movies. So
Wow.
I'll say it. I thought it was great. It's really good. Really good movie. A lot of fun to be had with The French Dispatch. So I'm very looking forward to Asteroid City whenever I get the chance to see that. I feel like there's a Shudder movie I'll probably watch a few weeks from now, and it'll be like, oh, that was great. It's two. So,
Yeah. Same.
but there's always something. But I think that'll about do it for this podcast. But good 2023 so far. A lot of movies to be had. A lot of fun times to be had. But yeah, Spencer, thank you so much for kind of talking through your cinematic journey of 2023 so far.
Sure, it's been fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Barbenheimer. Are you doing the double feature?
I'm seeing Barbie a little bit early, hoping to see Oppenheimer a little bit early too. But yeah, so I'm excited for both, but I'm more excited for Barbie. As you recall, it was on all of our most anticipated lists.
Yeah.
And I
Do
don't
we have
think
to come back?
Oppenheimer was on anyone's.
Do we have to come back here for a double feature pod? I feel like that might be
Oh,
we just
yeah.
talk about both movies.
We got to have the Barbenheimer podcast.
Let's do it. All right.
It has to happen. Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah,
So tune in.
I can't wait. Movies are back. They're back.
That's right.
Well, thank you everybody
We say that every time, by the way. We say movies are back every time.
They are back in my heart. They're back every single time.
That's right.
Well, thank
God
you
damn it,
everybody
you're
for
right.
they are back. I will get to this closing of this podcast eventually. God damn it! Thank you to everybody for listening to this podcast. As always, you can check out all of our stuff on moviebabble.com. All of our writings there, other podcasts, all the things. Look for us on social. You can find us. But yeah, until next time, thank you so much for listening.
Movies are back.
Where's the end recording? Oh, it's up here. Should I just keep that in?
Yeah, just
I might have to.